Standing outside the family court with a heavy file, I realized my husband did not just cheat. He laughed because he thought I was powerless. 6 months ago, he told me I did not understand finance when money vanished from our account. He did not know my job is uncovering what people hide. I did not catch him in bed. I caught him on paper and in the very text messages he thought were safe. My name is Lucy Collins. I am standing outside the main entrance of the Clay Ridge County Family Court, and the wind is biting at my cheeks. In my right hand, I am gripping a heavy, expandable file folder. It is thick, stuffed with pages that detail the last 9 years of my life, distilled down to numbers, timestamps, and printed screenshots. The weight of it feels substantial, like a brick I am preparing to throw through a glass window. People walk past me, some with their heads down, others arguing in hushed tones on their phones, but I am standing perfectly still. I look at the double doors. Inside that building, my husband, Ethan, is waiting. He is probably checking his watch, adjusting his silk tie, and preparing to put on the performance of a lifetime. He thinks this is going to be a standard divorce proceeding. He thinks he will walk away with his reputation intact and his bank accounts hidden. He is wrong. Most people assume that finding out your spouse is cheating is the moment that breaks you. They think it is the lipstick on the collar or the scent of unfamiliar perfume that shatters your world. I used to think that too. But standing here, I realized that the betrayal was not the worst part. The worst part was the arrogance. Ethan did not just cheat on me, he laughed at me. He laughed because he genuinely believed I was powerless to stop him. He looked me in the eye and told me I was imagining things, that I was crazy, that I was too lucky-oceanal to understand the complexities of our life. He banked on my silence. He wagered everything on the assumption that I would be the weeping, broken wife who would sign whatever paper he put in front of her just to make the pain stop. He forgot who I am. My mind drifts back to 6 months ago. It feels like a lifetime has passed since then, but the Mluckiores are as sharp as the edge of the paper in my hand. We were living in Ashford Ridge, in a house that I loved. It was a beautiful 2-story colonial, with a sprawling lawn and a kitchen that caught the morning light perfectly. Our life felt stable. It felt enviable. We had been married for 9 years. We had our routines. We did not have children, so our world revolved around our careers and each other. I thought we were happy. I thought that silence in the evenings was the comfortable silence of companionship, not the silence of secrets. Ethan is a charming man. He has always been the kind of person who can walk into a room and make everyone feel like they are the most important person there. He works in high-end sales and consulting, so his entire career is built on perception and persuasion. He knows how to smile with his eyes. He knows how to make a lie sound like the absolute truth. Back then, I trusted that smile. I trusted the way he would kiss my forehead before leaving for work. I had no reason not to trust him, or so I told myself. The changes started slowly. They were subtle shifts in the tectonic plates of our marriage, barely noticeable unless you were looking for thlucky. It started with his schedule. Suddenly, there were more business trips. He was flying to cities he had never mentioned before for clients he could not name due to non-disclosure agriluckiance. Then came the phone habits. Ethan used to leave his phone on the kitchen counter while he cooked or watched television. Then, he started keeping it in his pocket. Then, he started taking it into the bathroom. If I walked into the room while he was typing, he would angle the screen away, not abruptly, but casually, smoothly. "Just work, Luckyales," he would say with a tired sigh. "This new project is a nightmare." I believed him. Why would I not? I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be the supportive wife who understood the pressures of his career. I did not want to be the nagging spouse who questioned his every move. So I swallowed the small lump of anxiety forming in my throat and poured him another glass of wine. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that marriage requires space and trust. But the first real crack in the foundation did not come from a text message or a late-night phone call. It came from a bank statluckiant. I handle the household expenses. It was a division of labor we agreed on years ago. I pay the mortgage, the utilities, and the insurance pluckiums, and I manage our savings goals. One Tuesday evening, I sat down at the kitchen island with my laptop to reconcile our monthly budget. I logged into our joint checking account, the one we used for shared expenses and luck-urgency funds. I scrolled through the transactions, my eyes scanning the familiar list of grocery stores and gas stations. Then I stopped. There was a transfer I did not recognize, $5,000. It had been moved 3 days prior. The recipient was listed simply as Silver Heron Consulting LLC. I stared at the screen. $5,000 was not a small amount. It was significant. It was enough to notice. I frowned, trying to recall if we had discussed a home repair or a large purchase. The roof was fine. The cars were paid off. We had not booked a vacation. I searched my Mluck-Yori, but there was nothing. A cold prickle of unease started at the base of my neck. I clicked on the transaction details, hoping for more information, but there was nothing. Just the date, the amount, and that vague, unfamiliar name. My first instinct was not suspicion. It was concern. I thought perhaps our card had been compromised, or there was a banking error. I waited for Ethan to come home. When he walked through the door that evening, he looked exhausted. He loosened his tie and threw his jacket over the back of the sofa. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I was just looking at the accounts. Did you authorize a transfer for $5,000? Ethan paused. He was halfway to the refrigerator, but he stopped and turned to look at me. For a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. It was not fear. It was annoyance, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that smooth, practiced mask of patience. "Oh, that," he said, opening the fridge and grabbing a bottle of sparkling water. "Yes, I meant to tell you. It is for a contractor on the new development project. I had to front some cash to get the ball rolling. I will get reimbursed next month." I looked at him. His tone was easy, unbothered, but the explanation did not sit right. "A contractor?" I asked. "Why would you pay a contractor from our personal joint account? Do you not have a company credit card for that? Or an expense account?" Ethan took a long sip of water. He walked over to the island where I was sitting and leaned in, placing a hand on my shoulder. His grip was warm, but it felt heavy. "It is complicated, Lucy," he said, his voice dropping to that patronizing register he used when explaining technology to his mother. "The vendor is new. They are not in the corporate Lucky yet, and we needed to secure their services immediately. If I waited for accounting to approve it, we would have lost the bid. It is just a Tlucky-Porary bridge loan, essentially. Don't worry about it. But $5,000, Ethan," I pressed, "that is a lot of money to just move without asking me. And what is Silver Heron Consulting? I have never heard you mention Tlucky." He sighed, loud and long. He pulled his hand away from my shoulder and rubbed his Tlucky pulse, acting as if my questions were physically painful to him. "Lucy, please," he said. "I have been in meetings for 10 hours. I really do not have the energy to explain the intricacies of corporate vendor procurement to you right now. You are making a big deal out of nothing." "I am not making a big deal," I said, my voice tightening. "I am asking a question about our money. If you have an invoice or a contract, just show me so I can file it. You know I like to keep the record straight." Ethan laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. He looked at me, shaking his head with a Blucky-used smile on his face. "You and your records," he said. "Lucky, you do not need to file everything. You do not understand how these high-level finances work. It is not like balancing a checkbook for groceries. Just let me handle the business side, okay? You are stressing yourself out over standard procedure." He turned and walked toward the living room, effectively ending the conversation. I sat there in the kitchen, the light from the laptop screen illuminating my hands. I felt a flush of heat rise in my cheeks. It was shame. He had made me feel small. He had made me feel stupid. He had dismissed my valid concern as the nagging of an uneducated housewife. "You do not understand finance." The words echoed in my head, But he was wrong. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment the blindfold did not just slip. I ripped it off. I did not feel the sting of a wife who thinks her husband might be having an affair. I felt the cold, hard fury of a professional who has just been insulted. Ethan made a critical error that night. He forgot who I am. He sees me as Lucy, the woman who bakes banana bread on Sundays and organizes the linen closet. He sees me as the wife who nods politely at his work dinners. He forgot what I do for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I work for the Redwood Ridge Compliance Group. My official title is Senior Compliance Auditor. My entire career is built on finding things that do not add up. I spend my days sifting through thousands of Lucky L's, analyzing complex spreadsheets, and tracing digital footprints to ensure that companies are following the law. I look for discrepancies. I look for the tiny, almost invisible errors that people make when they are trying to hide lucky bezalluckiant, fraud, or money laundering. I know how to spot a shell company. I know how to trace an IP address. I know that when someone tells you that you do not understand the finances, it is usually because they are relying on your ignorance to cover their tracks. Ethan thought he was talking to his wife. He did not realize he was talking to an auditor. I closed my laptop that night without saying another word. I did not scream. I did not follow him into the living room to Delucky and more answers. I washed the dishes. I turned off the lights. I went to bed and lay next to him, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. He fell asleep instantly. Confident that he had successfully managed me, he thought he had put out the fire. In reality, he had just handed me the match. The next morning, I went to work as usual, but I did not just work on my assigned cases. I opened a new file on my private, secure drive. I named it simply Project Ethan. I started with the bank transfer, Silver Heron Consulting, LLC. It sounded legitimate enough. It sounded boring, which is exactly what a shell company is supposed to sound like. I ran the name through the state business registry. It existed. Sure enough, it had been incorporated only 4 months ago. I looked at the registered agent. It was a lawyer's office in a different county. That was standard for hiding ownership. But I dug deeper. I looked at the filing documents. I cross-referenced the address. It was a residential address, an apartment complex in the city. I felt a grim satisfaction settle in my stomach. Legitimate corporate consulting firms do not typically operate out of apartment 4B in a residential high-rise. Then I started looking at the timeline. I pulled up our phone records, the detailed ones that you have to request specifically from the carrier. I compared the dates of the business trips with the location data on the shared family cloud account that he had forgotten to disable on his tablet. He said he was in Chicago for a conference. The location data showed his tablet was 40 miles away, at a resort spa. He said he was in meetings until midnight. The data usage showed he was inactive for hours. Then active at 2 in the morning. I printed everything. I highlighted the inconsistencies in yellow. I made copies. I created a digital backup. For 6 months, I played the role he wanted me to play. I cooked dinner. I asked him how his day was. I smiled when he told me he had to work late again. I watched him lie to my face, and I did not flinch. Every time he dismissed me, every time he told me I was being sensitive, every time he laughed at my questions, I added another document to the file. He thought he was getting away with it. He thought his plan was perfect. He thought that by controlling the money and gaslighting me into submission, he could have his wife and his mistress too. He thought he was the smartest person in the room. But now, as I stand in front of the courthouse, I know the truth. I look at the heavy oak doors, and for the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of calm. The wind whips my hair across my face, but I do not brush it away. I did not hire a private investigator to follow him with a camera. I did not burst into a hotel room to catch him in the act. I did not need to see him touching her to know what he was doing. I caught him on paper. I caught him in the digital breadcrumbs he was too arrogant to sweep away. I caught him in the lies he texted, thinking they would never be read by anyone but her. I take a deep breath and tighten my grip on the file. You were right about one thing. Ethan, I whispered to the lucky air. I do not understand finance the way you do. I understand it better. I walk up the steps and push open the doors. It is time to show him what I found. The days following the discovery of that first transfer were not filled with screaming matches or shattered glass. That is the Hollywood version of a crumbling marriage, and our life was far too curated for such messy displays. Instead, a suffocating fog of politeness settled over our home in Ashford Ridge. It was a silence that felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm that refuses to break. I went to work at Redwood Ridge Compliance Group every morning with a mechanical precision. My office was a sanctuary of order. There, rules were absolute. If a figure in column A did not match the supporting documentation in column B, it was an error. It was black and white. There was no room for interpretation or feelings. I found comfort in the sterile hum of the server room and the crisp edges of printed spreadsheets. My colleagues knew me as the woman who could spot a compliance risk from 3 departments away. They trusted my judgment. They valued my scrutiny, but at home, my judgment was under constant siege. Ethan and I had been married for 9 years. We had made the conscious decision early on not to have children. We valued our freedom, our careers, and the pristine quiet of our home. For a long time, I believed that peace was enough. I thought that because we did not fight over parenting styles or school pickups, we were immune to the stresses that broke other couples. I equated the absence of conflict with the presence of love. I was naive. In the weeks after I asked about the Silver Heron consulting transfer, Ethan ramped up his charm offensive, but it was directed entirely outward. We attended a dinner party at a neighbor's house, a lovely evening with string lights and expensive wine. Ethan held court in the center of the patio, telling anecdotes that had the whole group laughing. He kept his hand on the small of my back, a gesture that looked possessive and loving to everyone else. To me, it felt like a restraint. At one point, our neighbor, Sarah, mentioned a confusing charge on her credit card stat Luckyent. I handle all the finances in our house, Ethan said, beaming at the group. Lucy gets overwhelmed by the numbers, so I just take care of it to save her the stress. She's a bit of a worrier. You know, the group chuckled. I froze, my glass of Chardonnay hovering halfway to my lips. It was a lie, a blatant, public lie designed to rewrite the narrative of our marriage before I could even speak. I looked at him, and he gave me a tight squeeze, his eyes daring me to correct him in front of our friends. I said nothing. I took a sip of wine and let the bitterness coat my tongue. That was his strategy. He was painting me as the fragile, incompetent wife, and he was the benevolent protector. On the drive home, the car was silent. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady, though my hands were shaking in my lap. Why did you say that? I asked. You know I manage the household budget. You know I am a compliance auditor. I am literally a professional auditor. Ethan sighed, the sound of a man dealing with a petulant child. You are proving my point. Lucy, he said, keeping his eyes on the dark road, you are so sensitive. I was just making conversation. It was a joke. You always take things so seriously. You really need to learn how to relax. You are imagining insults where there are none. Gaslighting is not a sudden blow to the head. It is a slow poisoning. It makes you question your own reality. For a moment, I wondered if he was right. Maybe I was being too rigid. Maybe I was ruining the evening, but then I lucky bared the $5,000. I lucky bared the missing invoice. The next evening, I decided to press him again. I needed to see the documentation for Silver Heron Consulting. If it was truly a contractor, there would be a contract. There would be a scope of work. Ethan was in the study, typing on his laptop. The door was half open. I walked in, carrying a cup of tea. Ethan, I said, I was hoping you could forward me the invoice for that consulting firm. I want to categorize it correctly for our tax records. He did not look up. I told you. I handled it, he said. I know, I replied. But I still need the paper trail. We cannot have unexplained withdrawals if we get audited. He stopped typing. He swiveled his chair around and looked at me with an expression of pure exhaustion. Stop making a scene. Lucy, he said cold and low. I am not making a scene. I said, I am standing in our study asking for a receipt. You are obsessing, he snapped. It is unbecoming. I told you it is a bridge loan for a vendor. The paperwork is at the office. I am not bringing sensitive work documents home just to satisfy your paranoia. Do not ask me about this again. He turned back to his screen, dismissing me. I walked out of the room, but I did not go to the bedroom to cry. I went to the kitchen table. I opened my personal laptop. I created a new spreadsheet. I did not title it Divorce. I titled it Household Discrepancies. Column 1. Date, Column 2. Time, Column 3. The event, Column 4. His explanation. I typed in the date of the dinner party. Ethan claims I am bad with finances in front of neighbors. I typed in tonight's date. Refused to provide silver heron invoice. Claimed documents are at the office. Called me paranoid. I was not fighting him anymore. I was documenting him. The tension in the house shifted from a fog to a physical barrier. We moved around each other like ghosts. He began to lock his phone, which I expected, but then came the digital lockout. It happened on a Tuesday. I tried to log into our shared cloud account to upload some photos from a weekend trip we had taken months prior. I typed in the password we had shared for 5 years. Incorrect password. I frowned and typed it again, thinking I had made a typo. Incorrect password. I tried the backup password we used for the alarm Syst Lucky. Access denied. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tried the login for our mobile carrier account. Changed. I tried the login for the rewards credit card. Changed. I sat there, staring at the red text on the screen. This was not an accident. This was a blockade. He was systematically cutting off my visibility. He was blinding me. I waited until he came home. I was sitting on the sofa, the laptop open on the coffee table. We need to talk, I said. Ethan hung his coat up, looking annoyed before the conversation even began. What now, he asked. I cannot access the cloud drive, I said, or the phone bill, or the credit card portal. The passwords have been changed. He walked into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water, taking his time. Oh, that, he said, his voice casual, as if discussing the weather. I updated our security protocols. I read an article about data breaches. Our old passwords were too weak. I set up new, complex ones. It is for our protection. Great, I said. What are they? He took a sip of water and looked at me over the rim of the glass. I wrote Thlucky down somewhere. He said, I will give Thlucky to you later. It is a new Systlucky. I want to make sure everything is synced before we start sharing access again. I do not want you locking us out by accident. You know how you get with technology. I stood up. The rage was white-hot in my chest, but I forced my voice to reluctane level. I use complex encryption software for a living. Ethan, I think I can handle a password. Write Thlucky down for me, now. He set the glass down hard on the counter. The sound echoed in the luck-empty kitchen. Stop it, he hissed. Stop acting like a crazy person. I am trying to protect our assets, and you are treating me like a criminal. This is exactly why I changed Thlucky. You are out of control. You are looking for problems until you calm down and start acting like a supportive wife. Maybe it is better if I manage the accounts. It is for your own good. This is the new order of things. Lucy, get used to it. He walked past me and went upstairs. I heard the bedroom door click shut. The lock turned. I stood alone in the living room. The silence was deafening. I looked at the laptop screen, at the access denied message still blinking at me. He was not just hiding a transaction anymore. He was seizing control. He was taking away my agency, brick by brick, password by password. He wanted me blind. He wanted me dependent. He wanted me to doubt my own sanity so deeply that I would accept whatever scrap of truth he decided to feed me. I went back to my spreadsheet. I added a new entry. Date October 12th. Event changed all shared passwords. Explanation. Security protocols. Claimed I am unable to handle technology. Stated, this is the new order. I looked at the list. It was growing. The pattern was undeniable. This was not just about a mistress. Men with mistresses hide their phones. They do not systematically lock their wives out of the utility bills. They do not rewrite history in front of neighbors. A chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I realized then that I was not just dealing with infidelity. I was dealing with a dismantling. Ethan was preparing for something. He was moving pieces on a board I had not even realized we were playing on. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I do not know if he is just hiding another woman, I whispered to the lucky room, or if he is preparing to hide the entire marriage from me. I did not know the answer yet. But I knew one thing for certain: I was done asking for permission. If he was going to lock the front door, I would find a way in through the window, and I would not just look. I would take everything I found, and I would make sure that when the light finally touched it, there would be nowhere left for him to hide. I did not resort to the desperate cliches of a suspicious wife. I did not check his pockets for receipts while he showered, and I did not smell his shirts for the lingering scent of foreign perfume. Those methods are for people who are looking for reassurance, for people who hope to find nothing. I was not looking for reassurance. I was gathering intelligence. My approach was passive but attentive. The same way I would monitor a high-risk account for unusual activity, I simply watched the patterns. The most telling anomaly was the garage ritual. For years, Ethan had a predictable routine. He would pull into the driveway, the garage door would rumble down, and 30 seconds later, the door to the mudroom would open. He would walk in, drop his keys in the ceramic bowl, and greet me. But that timeline had shifted. Now, the garage door would close, trapping the silence of the suburbs outside, but the mudroom door would reluctantly shut. 5 minutes would pass, then 10, sometimes 15. I could see the faint red glow of his brake lights reflecting against the closed garage door through the small window in the laundry room. He was sitting in his car, safe in the soundproof bubble of his luxury sedan, having conversations he could not have inside our home. He was scrubbing his digital history, composing himself, switching masks. He was transitioning from the man he was with her to the man he had to pretend to be with me. I never opened the door to ask what he was doing. I knew that if I interrupted him, he would claim he was finishing a conference call with a client on the West Coast. He would make me feel intrusive. So I waited. I let him think his sanctuary was secure. The breakthrough did not happen in the garage. However, it happened on the kitchen island, in the bright, unforgiving light of a Saturday morning. We shared a tablet, a sleek device we used for controlling the smart home Lucky, reading news, and occasionally streaming music. Since Ethan had changed the passwords to our financial accounts and his personal devices, I assumed he had locked this down as well. But he had made a careless mistake. He had left it logged in with his personal profile active while he rushed out to get coffee. I was wiping down the counter when the screen lit up. It was a notification banner. In the world of data security, we call this a vulnerability, a single, unguarded endpoint. I did not touch the screen. I knew that if I swiped or tried to open the app, I might trigger a passcode requirement I could not meet, or worse, the device might log the access at Lucky Pete. I learned early in my career that you do not tamper with the original evidence. You preserve it. I leaned closer. The banner was from a messaging app I did not use. The sender's name was displayed clearly: Brianna Vale. My heart did not pound. It stopped. The name was unfamiliar, yet it felt heavy, like a stone dropping into a deep well. The message preview was short, but it was enough to strip away the last shred of doubt I had been clinging to. Do you have to play the model husband tonight? I stared at the words. The tone was intimate, mocking, and comfortable. It implied a shared joke, a mutual understanding that my marriage was nothing more than a role Ethan had to perform. It reduced 9 years of my life to a performance. Then, a second message popped up immediately below it. Don't worry, she won't dare do anything. She needs me. The air in the kitchen lucky to drop 20 degrees. That sentence hit me harder than the implication of infidelity. She needs me. It was not just about sex or romance. It was about power. Ethan was not just betraying me, he was banking on my dependence. He believed I was so weak, so financially and lucky-oceanally tethered to him that I would never leave, even if I knew the truth. He saw me as a fixture in his life, something necessary but pathetic, like a piece of furniture that had lost its shine but was too heavy to move. I did not cry. I did not scream. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my own phone. I opened the camera app. My hands were perfectly steady. I took 3 clear photos of the tablet screen, ensuring the time, the sender's name, and the content of the messages were legible. I captured the reflection of the kitchen in the screen as well, proving the location. I had the evidence. I had the name, Brianna Vale. Moments later, the sound of the garage door opening broke the silence. Ethan was back. I slipped my phone into my pocket and turned back to the sink. When he walked in, holding a tray of coffees, he looked relaxed. He looked like a man without a care in the world. He saw the tablet on the island, and for a fraction of a second, his step faltered. He walked over to it quickly, picked it up, and pressed the side button to put it to sleep. "Forgot I left this here," he said, his voice casual but his eyes darting to my face. "It lit up," I said. I turned off the faucet and dried my hands on a towel. I kept my voice flat, devoid of the hysteria he was expecting. "You got a message from someone named Brianna Vale." Ethan froze. He looked at the tablet, then at me. He did not panic. He did not apologize. He laughed. It was a dry, condescending sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Brianna," he said, shaking his head. "She is the new marketing coordinator. She has a terrible sense of humor. Probably sending me some joke about the upcoming gala. Why are you reading my work messages?" "Lucy." "It did not look like work," I said, leaning against the counter. "She asked if you had to play the model husband tonight. And then she said, 'I would not dare do anything because I need you.'" The smile vanished from Ethan's face. His expression hardened into something cold and sharp. He took a step toward me, using his height to intimidate. "You are reading things out of context," he said. "And frankly, you are violating my privacy. Is this what you do all day? Spy on me? Invent scenarios." I did not invent anything. "Ethan." I saw the words. "You saw what you wanted to see," he shouted, his voice suddenly raising, filling the kitchen. "You are paranoid. Lucy, I have been telling you this for months. You are obsessing over finances you do not understand. And now you are hallucinating affairs because a colleague sent a sarcastic text. You are sick." I looked at him. He was good. He was incredibly good. If I did not have the photo on my phone, if I did not have the training to trust the data over the narrative, I might have believed him. I might have thought I was the lucky. "I am not sick," I said quietly. "And I am not hallucinating." "Yes, you are," he hissed, leaning in close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath. "You are unstable if you keep this up. Lucy, you are going to need professional help. Maybe I should call Dr. Evans. Maybe you need a prescription to help you calm down. Because this behavior, it is not normal. It is harassment." I realized then exactly what he was doing. He was not just defending himself. He was laying the groundwork. If this ever went to court, he would paint me as the hysterical, mentally unstable wife who drove him away with her unfounded jealousy. He would use my questions, my spying, and my confusion about finances as proof that I was unfit to manage my own affairs. He was writing a story where he was the victim of a crazy woman. "I am fine, Ethan," I said, pushing past him to leave the kitchen. "Enjoy your coffee." "Walk away," he called after me. "That is all you ever do. You run away because you know you are wrong." I walked upstairs to the guest bedroom, which I had started using as a home office on weekends. I closed the door and locked it. I sat down at my desk. I did not weep. The tears that should have come were replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. He thought I was weak. He thought I needed him. He thought he could gaslight me into an asylum if it meant protecting his assets and his ego. I opened my laptop. I did not go to social media to stalk Brianna Vale, not yet. I went to my encrypted hard drive. I created a new master folder. I named it simply The Case. Inside, I created 4 subfolders. Folder 1 Bank. Here, I moved the spreadsheets I had already started regarding the Silver Heron consulting transfer. I added a new note about the blocked passwords. I noted the date he took control of the accounts. This was financial abuse, and I would document it as such. Folder 2 Timeline. I opened a document and logged today's event. Saturday, October 21st, 10:15 in the morning. Ethan leaves tablet unlocked. Message from Brianna Vale observed and photographed. Ethan denies. Accuses me of mental instability. Threatens to call a doctor. I typed every word he said while it was fresh in my muckery. His claim that I was sick was crucial. It proved his intent to discredit me. Folder 3 Messages. I connected my phone to the laptop and transferred the photos of the tablet screen. I cropped Thlucky, enhanced the contrast to make the text pop, and saved Thlucky with metadata intact. These were my first hard pieces of evidence linking him to her. Folder 4 Witness. This folder was luck empty for now. But I knew it would not stay that way. I needed people who could verify his lies. I needed to find out who Brianna Vale was, who she knew, and who might have seen Thlucky together. I worked for hours. I treated it like a compliance audit for a company that was about to be indicted. I detached myself from the woman who had vowed to love this man until death. I became the auditor who was going to dismantle a fraud. That evening, Ethan came home late. I had already eaten dinner alone. I was sitting in the living room, reading a book, or pretending to. He walked in, smelling of expensive scotch and the cool night air. He looked at me with a smirk playing on his lips. He did not look like a man who was afraid of being caught. He looked like a man who had already won. He walked over to the mantel and adjusted a picture frame, a photo of us from our honeymoon. He looked at it for a moment, then turned to me. "You know, Lucy," he said, his voice soft, almost pitying. "You really should stop digging. You are only going to hurt yourself. You do not have the stamina for this. You never have." I turned a page of my book, not looking up. "Is that so?" I asked. "It is," he said. "I hold all the cards, the money, the connections, the reputation. Who are they going to believe? The successful consultant or the wife who sits at home making up conspiracy theories?" He walked toward the stairs, but paused on the bottom step. He looked back at me, his eyes dark and lucky of any warmth. "You cannot win this game, Lucy," he said. "So stop playing before you lucky-embarrass yourself." He went upstairs. I heard his footsteps fade down the hall. I closed my book and placed it gently on the table. I looked at the luck-empty space where he had been standing. He called it a game. He thought this was a competition of egos. He thought he could bluff his way to victory because he held the bank passwords and the social capital. He was wrong. This was not a game. It was an investigation. And he had just given me the motivation to be the most thorough, ruthless auditor he had ever encountered. I stood up and turned off the lamp. Darkness filled the room, but my mind was clear. "I am not playing, Ethan," I whispered into the silence. "I am preparing." The war at home shifted from a silent cold front to an open campaign of psychological guerrilla warfare. Ethan stopped trying to hide his disdain. In fact, he selected to derive a perverse pleasure from showcasing it, like a trophy hunter displaying a fresh kill. He wanted everyone to know that I was the prob-lucky, the anchor dragging down his soaring ship. It started in public, amongst the people we called friends. We were at a barbecue at the Miller House, a casual affair with grilled steaks and craft beer. I was standing near the cooler, chatting with a neighbor about her garden, when Ethan's voice cut through the air, loud and booming. "Better be careful with that second beer. Dave," Ethan shouted, gesturing toward me with his bottle. "Or Lucy will write you a citation. She is the morality police, you know." Nothing gets past the fun warden. The group laughed, but it was an uncomfortable, jagged sound. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Not from lucky embarrassment, but from the sheer audacity of it. I had never policed his drinking. I had never told him what to do in social settings. He was rewriting my personality in real time, casting me as a shrew so that when he eventually discarded me, everyone would nod and say, "Well, she was rather difficult, wasn't she?" He did not stop there. At home, he began leaving breadcrumbs. He would leave a receipt from a jewelry store on the kitchen counter, not for a large amount, just enough to catch the eye. When I asked about it, he would snatch it up and tell me it was for a client gift, looking at me with wide, mock-innocent eyes. "Why are you always snooping?" "Lucy?" he would ask, shaking his head. "It is exhausting. I cannot even leave a scrap of paper on my own counter without you launching an investigation. You are obsessed with controlling me." He was baiting me. He wanted me to scream. He wanted me to throw a plate or lucky and to see his phone so he could point a finger and call me hysterical. But I did not scream. I catalogued. Date November 3rd. Incident receipt from Lucky Earl Stone left in plain sight. Reaction: accused me of snooping when I asked a simple question. Despite my resolve, the atmosphere was suffocating. I decided to make one final, rational attempt to salvage the wreckage, or at least to say I had tried everything before I burned the bridge. I waited until a Tuesday evening, when the house was quiet and Ethan was nursing a whiskey in the living room. "Ethan," I said, standing in the doorway, "I think we should see a marriage counselor. Doctor. Evans has an opening next week. I think we need a neutral third party to help us communicate." Ethan looked at me over the rim of his glass. He did not look angry. He looked amused. He set the glass down slowly and let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Counseling," he repeated. "You think we need counseling?" "I think our marriage is in trouble," I said steadily. "And I think we owe it to the last 9 years to try and fix it." He stood up and walked toward me, stopping just inside my personal space. The smell of whiskey was sharp on his breath. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You spy on me. You harass me about my finances. You accuse me of affairs because of a text message. And now you want me to go sit on a couch and talk about my feelings. You think you are the victim here. Lucy." The question hung in the air like toxic smoke. "I am not playing the victim," I said. "I am trying to be a partner." "You are not a partner," he spat. "You are a liability, and let me tell you something else. If you keep pushing this, if you try to drag me into some messy legal battle or expose my private life to the world, I will make sure you regret it. I will drag the litigation out until you are bankrupt. I will burn every dollar we have on lawyers before I let you take a dime. Do you understand me? I will leave you with nothing but the clothes on your back." It was not a heat-of-the-moment threat. It was a promise. I looked into his eyes and saw the absolute lack of luckipathy. He did not care about the 9 years. He did not care about me. He only cared about winning. "I understand," I said quietly, and I did. That night, I went back to my computer, but not to cry. I went to verify his threat. If he was willing to burn the money, I needed to know where the fuel was kept. I started digging into the administrative bowels of our life. I logged into the Postal Service portal to check our mail settings. My stomach turned over. There was a pending request to forward all mail addressed to Ethan Collins to a P.O. box in the city. He was diverting the physical evidence bank stat luckients, credit card offers, legal notices away from the house. I moved to the insurance policies. We had substantial life insurance policies on each other, set up 5 years ago. I managed to answer the security questions because I knew his mother's maiden name and the name of his first pet. When the dashboard loaded, I felt the blood drain from my face. The beneficiary on his policy had been changed 2 weeks ago. It was no longer Lucy Collins. It was a trust. The EC Revocable Trust. He had relucky-oved me. If he died tomorrow, I would not see a penny. He had effectively erased me from his future, but the final blow came a few days later, and it was not a document. It was a conversation I was never meant to hear. But Ethan had become sloppy in his arrogance. He was on the phone in the sunroom. The door cracked open just an inch. I was in the hallway, holding a basket of laundry. She is clueless, Ethan was saying, his voice light and laughing. I told her we needed to cut back on spending, and she started couponing. Can you believe it? She actually thinks she is helping. He paused, listening to the person on the other end, undoubtedly Brianna. Don't worry about the papers, he said. I told you. Lucy will sign anything I put in front of her if she thinks it will keep me around. She is desperate, Brianna. She is terrified of being 40 and divorced. I could put a napkin in front of her and tell her it is a post-nuptial agrilucient to save our marriage, and she would sign it in blood. I stood frozen in the hallway. The basket of laundry felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She will sign anything to keep me. That was his assessment of me. He did not just think I was stupid. He thought I was pathetic. He believed my dignity had a price, and that price was his presence. He thought he could humiliate me, strip me of my assets, and cheat on me, and I would thank him for the privilege of reluckiating Mrs. Collins. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud break. It was the quiet, metallic click of a lock sliding into place. I realized then that this was not a marriage crisis. This was a hostile takeover. He was not just having an affair. He was executing a carefully planned campaign to divest himself of me while keeping all the equity. He wanted to discard me, but he wanted to break me first so I wouldn't fight back. I put the laundry basket down. I walked to the kitchen, picked up my car keys, and walked out the door. I did not say goodbye. I did not leave a note. I drove 40 minutes to the neighboring county. I pulled into the parking lot of a nondescript office building made of brick and glass. The sign on the door read, Marianne Holt, Family Law. I had researched her for 3 days. She was not the most famous lawyer in the state, nor the most expensive, but she had a reputation. They called her the Scalpel. She didn't shout, and she didn't perform for the cameras. She cut clean, deep, and precise. I sat in her office 10 minutes later. It was a room that smelled of old paper and furniture polish. Marianne Holt was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, cut into a sharp bob, and glasses that magnified her intelligent, unblinking eyes. She sat behind a massive redwood desk that looked like a barricade. I placed my folder on the desk. It was not the thick file I have now, but it was the beginning. My husband is cheating on me, I said, my voice steady. But that is not the problem. The problem is that he is moving assets, changing beneficiaries, and gaslighting me into believing I am insane. He told his mistress I would sign anything to keep him. He threatened to burn all our money on legal fees if I fought him. Marianne looked at the folder. She opened it and scanned the spreadsheet of the bank transfer to Silver Heron Consulting. She looked at the photo of the text messages. She looked at the screenshot of the insurance beneficiary change. She closed the folder and folded her hands on top of it. She looked at me for a long moment, evaluating not just the case, but the client. He thinks he is smarter than you, Marianne said. It was not a question. He thinks I am an idiot, I replied. He thinks I am a soft, suburban housewife who doesn't understand finance. And what do you do, Mrs. Collins? I am a senior compliance auditor, I said. I find fraud for a living. A small, thin smile appeared on Marianne's lips. It was the first time I felt a glimmer of hope. Good, she said, because we are going to need that. In divorce court, the law does not care much about feelings. It does not care that he broke your heart. It cares about the numbers. It cares about the contract. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. He is banking on you being lucky-oceanal, she said. He wants you to scream. He wants you to react to the betrayal so he can point to your instability. We are not going to give him that. We are going to give him silence. We are going to let him think he is winning. We are going to let him get comfortable. I have the text messages, I said. Is that enough? Marianne shook her head slightly. The messages are good for context, she said. But we do not need him to confess to the affair. Infidelity is not the smoking gun it used to be. We need something better. We need him to lie under oath. We need him to hide money and then sign a financial affidavit saying he has disclosed everything. She tapped the folder with her index finger. "We do not need a confession, Lucy," she said, her voice hard as flint. "We just need a contradiction, and men like your husband, they cannot help but contradict lucky selves, because they cannot keep track of the lies they tell to people they consider beneath lucky." I took a deep breath. For the first time in 6 months, I did not feel alone. I felt armed. "Tell me what to do," I said. Marianne opened a fresh legal pad and picked up a pen. "Go home," she said. "Cook dinner, smile, and do not sign a single piece of paper until I see it first." Marianne Holt sat behind her mahogany desk, her hands clasped on top of a legal pad. She looked at me with the stern, uncompromising gaze of a woman who had seen every variety of marital disaster Clayridge County had to offer. The first thing she did was strip away my impulses. "I know you have the skills to crack his lucky ale, Lucy," she said, her voice level. "I know you could probably clone his phone or install a keylogger on his laptop. You are an auditor. You know how to find back doors. Do not do it." I sat up straighter in the leather chair. "Why not?" "If I find proof." "If you find proof illegally, it is fruit of the poisonous tree," Marianne interrupted. "Not only will the judge throw it out, but your husband's lawyer will use it to paint you as a criminal. We do not hack. We do not wiretap. We do not plant trackers on his car. We are going to destroy him, Mrs. Collins, but we are going to do it by the book. We want your hands to be completely clean when we walk into that courtroom." She leaned forward. "We only use what you have legal access to. Joint accounts, shared devices, public records, and whatever we force him to hand over through the discovery process. Is that understood?" "Understood," I said. That marked the beginning of my new full-time job. I stopped being a wife and started being a case manager. I spent my nights building the master timeline. It was a massive spreadsheet that integrated every scrap of data I had collected. I correlated the dates of his business trips with credit card charges at restaurants in the city. I matched the nights he came home late with the timestamps of the text messages I had photographed. I marked the exact date and time he changed the passwords. I logged the date he relucky-oved me as the beneficiary on the insurance policy. When you look at a marriage day by day, you see love and routine. When you look at it in a spreadsheet, stripped of sentiment, you see the architecture of a betrayal. It was not impulsive. It was sysluckic. 2 days later, Marianne filed the petition for divorce at the Clayridge County Family Court. We did not give Ethan a heads up. We did not sit down for a tearful conversation at the kitchen table. We filed ex parte to request an automatic temporary restraining order on financial assets. In our state, this is a standard procedure that freezes the status quo. It means neither party can sell assets, borrow against property, or move significant funds without the other person's written consent or a court order. It was the financial equivalent of tackling him before he could run out the door with the silverware. Then came the formal request for discovery. This is the part of the legal process that narcissists hate the most. It is the lucky and for transparency. Marianne sent a request for production of documents that was 3 pages long. We asked for everything. 3 years of tax returns. 12 months of bank statluckiants for every account in his name. Joint or individual. Credit card statluckiants. Retire luckiant fund activity. And specifically, we asked for all lucky ales and communications regarding Silver Heron Consulting LLC and any other business entities formed in the last 24 months. While the legal gears started to turn, I had to live in the house with him. Marianne had coached me on this too. She called it strategic silence. "He feeds on your reaction," she had told me. "He wants you to cry so he can call you weak. He wants you to yell so he can call you crazy. Be a gray rock. Be boring. Be unshakable. Do not defend yourself. Do not explain yourself. Just acknowledge and exit." It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Ethan was ramping up his psychological warfare, sensing that something was shifting in me. He would send me text messages while he was at work, designed specifically to trigger a fight. "I will be late tonight. Try not to wait up and ruin the evening with your mood. He wrote on a Tuesday. In the past, I would have replied with a paragraph defending myself, asking why he was late, begging him to be kind. Now, I looked at the phone, took a breath, and typed 2 words, noted, thanks. He hated it. 2 hours later, another text, did you touch my desk? I can tell when you have been snooping. It is pathetic. Lucy, I replied, I have not entered your office. He came home that night spoiling for a fight. He slammed the door. He walked into the kitchen where I was making tea. You are acting weird, he said, staring at me with narrowed eyes. What is this new attitude? Are you giving me the silent treatment? Is that your big power move? I stirred my tea, the spoon clinking softly against the ceramic. I am just tired. Ethan, I am not playing any games. You are always tired, he sneered. You are the most exhausting person I have ever met. No wonder I have to work so much. Being here is like being in a funeral home. He waited for me to snap. He wanted me to ask him if he was working or if he was with her. He wanted the drama. I am sorry you feel that way, I said calmly. I picked up my tea and walked out of the room. I could feel his confusion radiating off him. He was losing his grip on the narrative. If I was not the crazy, jealous wife, then who was he? But his arrogance made him sloppy, because he thought I was just sulking. He continued to text her, and he continued to make financial moves, assuming I was too bad with money to notice. The breakthrough came in the form of a clerical error. Ethan had been meticulous about rerouting his mail to the P.O. box. But banks are large, bureaucratic institutions, and sometimes their automated systluckies do not update across all departments simultaneously. I came home one afternoon to find a letter in the mailbox. It was addressed to both Ethan Collins and Lucy Collins. It was from a regional bank we did not use for our primary checking. I opened it. It was a notice of interest rate adjustment for a commercial line of credit. My hands shook as I read the document. It referenced a loan number I did not recognize. The principal amount was $50,000. The borrower was listed as Ethan Collins, and the co-borrower was listed as Lucy Collins. I stared at the paper. $50,000. I had never signed for this loan. I had never stepped foot in that bank. I went straight to my computer. I pulled up the credit report I had run on myself a month ago. It was clean. I ran it again. There it was. A new inquiry. A new open account. He had forged my signature. He had taken out a joint loan to fund something, using my credit history to boost the application, without my knowledge. I scanned the document and sent it to Marianne immediately. Then I started digging into the why. Why did he need $50,000 cash? His salary was substantial. Our savings before he locked me out were healthy. I went back to the Silver Heron consulting documents I had found earlier. I looked at the registered agent address again. I ran a search on the address, cross-referencing it with the marketing firm where Brianna Vale worked. It was a dead end. But then I looked at the loan document again. The loan was secured. It was secured against a vehicle, a luxury SUV. I didn't recognize the VIN number. I ran the VIN. It belonged to a car registered to Silver Heron Consulting LLC. I sat back, my mind racing. He took out a loan in our names to buy a car for the shell company. I went to the social media profiles of Brianna's friends. I had not looked at Brianna's profile directly because she was private, but her friends were not. I scrolled through weeks of photos, and there it was, a photo posted 3 weeks ago. Brianna standing in front of a brand new, white luxury SUV with a giant red bow on the hood. The caption read, "New job, new ride." So blessed. I zoomed in on the license plate. It was partially obscured, but the first 3 letters matched the registration I had pulled for Silver Heron. The pieces slammed together with terrifying clarity. Silver Heron Consulting was not a vendor. It was a funnel. Ethan was using marital funds and debt taken out in my name to finance a lifestyle for his mistress. He was washing the money through a fake company to make it look like a business expense, then using that company to buy gifts for her. He was not just cheating on me, he was robbing me to pay for it. I felt a cold rage that was entirely different from the heartbreak. This was theft. This was fraud. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Ethan. "I need you to sign some tax documents tonight. My accountant sent Thlucky over. Just standard stuff for the filing extension. Don't make a big deal out of it." I looked at the screen. He was trying to cover his tracks. He probably wanted me to sign something that would retroactively authorize the loan or the business structure. He thought he could just wave a paper in front of me, call it tax stuff, and I would sign it because I was the dumb wife. I forwarded the text to Marianne. Her reply came 2 minutes later. "Do not sign anything. The process server is out for delivery. He will be served within the hour." I sat in the living room and waited. When the doorbell rang, I did not answer it. I let Ethan answer it. He was in the kitchen, pouring wine. He walked to the door, looking annoyed at the interruption. I heard the door open. I heard a deep voice ask, "Ethan Collins." "Yes," Ethan said. "You have been served." The door closed. There was a long, heavy silence. Ethan walked into the living room. His face was a mask of shock that was quickly twisting into fury. He held the thick packet of papers in his hand. "What is this?" he whispered, his voice turlucky-bling with rage. "You filed for divorce. You filed a restraining order on my assets." I looked up from my book. I kept my face completely blank. "I did," I said. "You have no idea what you have done," he snarled, throwing the papers onto the coffee table. "You have just declared war. Lucy, I told you I would destroy you. I told you I would leave you with nothing." "Actually," I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt, "you cannot do that. The court order freezes everything as of today. If you move a single penny, if you sell a single stock, if you transfer any more money to Silver Heron Consulting, you will be in contempt of court." Ethan stopped. The color drained from his face at the mention of the company name. "What did you say?" he asked. "Silver Heron," I repeated, my voice steady and cool. "And the $50,000 loan you took out in my name to buy Brianna's car? I know about it. Ethan, I know about all of it." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He realized that the woman standing in front of him was not the wife he had disregarded. She was the auditor he had underestimated. That is business," he stammered, trying to regain his footing. "You don't understand corporate structure. It is a write-off." "No, Ethan," I said. "It is marital waste, and it is fraud." I picked up my phone. "My lawyer will handle the communication from now on," I said. "I suggest you get a good one. You are going to need it." I walked past him and went upstairs to the guest room. I locked the door. My phone buzzed with an unlucky from Marianne. It was short, reviewing the loan documents. "This changes the strategy. If he used marital assets to fund the affair, it is no longer a private moral failing. It is a dissipation of the marital estate. The court does not care who he sleeps with, but they care very much about who he spends the family money on. We are going to ask for every dollar back." I sat on the edge of the bed. I did not feel triumphant yet. I knew the fight was just beginning, but as I listened to Ethan pacing furiously downstairs, shouting into his phone, I knew one thing for sure. He was not laughing anymore. The discovery process is like turning on a floodlight in a dark cellar. You see everything you were never meant to see, and once seen, it can never be forgotten. Following the court order, the banks had no choice but to comply. The privacy shield Ethan had so carefully constructed around his financial life did not just crack, it shattered. I sat in my living room surrounded by boxes of financial records that had been delivered to Marianne's office and then couriered to me. My home looked less like a sanctuary and more like a forensic accounting lab. I picked up a stack of Statluckiants from a credit card Ethan had opened 18 months ago. He had listed the billing address as his office, which is why I never saw the envelopes. I started highlighting. There were charges for the Ritz-Carlton in Half Moon Bay for a weekend in July. That was the weekend Ethan told me he was at a mandatory leadership retreat in the woods with spotty cell service. There were flight confirmations for 2 passengers to Miami and Decluckybur. First class. I lucky beared that week. I had the flu, and Ethan had been so solicitous, making me soup before telling me he had to fly to Chicago for a crisis meeting. Then there were the gifts. I saw a charge for $3,000 at a boutique jeweler in the city. I looked at the date. It was 2 days before my birthday. My heart jumped for a foolish second, or lucky bearing the pair of diamond earrings he had given me that year. I went upstairs and opened my jewelry box. I took out the earrings and found the appraisal slip I had saved. The value listed was $500. He had spent $3,000 at the store. He bought me the $500 earrings to keep me happy, and he spent the reluctating $2,500 on something else, something for someone else. I felt a wave of nausea, but I swallowed it down. I went back to the spreadsheet. I was not just looking at infidelity, I was looking at Lucky Bezaluckiant. He was siphoning off our marital assets to fund a secondary life, and he was giving me the scraps to keep me quiet. Marianne did not just rely on the paper trail. She brought in professionals to connect the physical dots. We met in her office on a rainy Thursday morning to review the report from Derek Weller. Derek was a private investigator, but he looked nothing like the ones on television. He was a quiet, unassuming man in a beige sweater who looked like a high school history teacher. He did not speak in dramatic tones. He simply laid a manila envelope on the desk. "We established surveillance on the subject for 14 days, Derek said, opening a laptop to show us a map. "Mr. Collins leaves his office at 5:30 in the evening. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. He does not drive toward your home in Ashford Ridge. He drives to the purely residential district of Ridley Heights." Derek tapped a key, and a photo appeared on the screen. It was grainy but unmistakable. Ethan's car was parked in the underground garage of a sleek, modern high-rise called The Summit. "He enters the building using a key fob," Derek continued. "He stays for approximately 3 hours. We have logs of his vehicle entering and exiting 17 times in the last month alone." "Does he meet anyone?" Marianne asked. Derek nodded and clicked to the next photo. It was taken with a long-range lens. It showed Ethan standing on a balcony. Standing next to him, holding a glass of wine, was a woman with dark hair. She was laughing, her head thrown back. It was Brianna Vale. "We ran a check on the unit," Derek said. "Unit 12B. It is leased. The lease is not in Mr. Collins's name, nor is it in Miss Vale's name." "Who is it leased to?" I asked, leaning forward. "Silver Heron Consulting LLC, Derek said. The room went silent. "He is paying her rent," I whispered. "He is using the shell company to pay for her apartment." "It gets more interesting," Derek said. He pulled out a printed document. I looked into the incorporation papers for Silver Heron Consulting. "You mentioned you thought it was a shell company for Brianna. You were close, but not quite right." He slid the paper across the desk to me. "The registered owner of Silver Heron Consulting is a man named Marcus Vale." "Who is Marcus Vale?" I asked. "He is Brianna Vale's 22-year-old brother," Derek said. "He is a college student with no income and no credit history. Yet, he is the sole proprietor of a consulting firm that receives monthly payments from your husband and holds the lease on a luxury apartment." The complexity of it made my head spin. Ethan had not just been sloppy. He had been devious. He had set up the company in her brother's name to create a layer of separation. If I had looked for Brianna's name on the business registry, I would have found nothing. He had involved her family. He had built a network of lies that required the participation of other people. "This is money laundering," Marianne said, her voice hard. "He is moving marital funds into a business entity to hide Thlucky, and then using that entity to distribute benefits to his mistress. It is dissipation of assets. Clear as day." I looked at the photo of Ethan on the balcony. He looked so relaxed. He looked like a man who owned the world. He had no idea that while he was sipping wine, we were dismantling his fortress brick by brick. When I confronted Ethan with the discovery of the apartment lease sent through our lawyers, of course he did not apologize. He attacked. He came home that night in a fury. He stormed into the kitchen where I was reviewing the latest batch of documents. "You have people following me," he shouted. "Are you insane? That is stalking. Lucy, you are a criminal." I did not look up from my paperwork. "It is not stalking, Ethan. It is a licensed investigation for a divorce proceeding. And since you are paying for the apartment with money that belongs to both of us, I have a right to know where the rent is going." "It is a business expense," he yelled, slamming his hand on the table. "Silver Heron is a legitimate vendor." "Owned by a college student?" I asked, finally meeting his eyes. "Does Marcus Vale do a lot of high-level consulting for your firm between his midterm exams?" Ethan's face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. He opened his mouth to speak, but the lie died in his throat. He knew I had him. The paper trail was absolute. Documents do not have feelings. Documents do not get confused. Documents do not know how to act. They simply state the truth. "You are just jealous," he spat, pivoting to a new angle. "You are so consumed by jealousy that you are trying to ruin my professional reputation. You are making up these wild theories because you cannot handle the fact that I have friends." "Friends do not cost $5,000 a month in rent," I said calmly. "You are twisting everything," he screamed. "You are reading things that aren't there. You are trying to frame me." He stormed out. But the damage was done. He was panicking. The next piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. 2 days later, my phone rang. The number was local, but I did not recognize it. "Hello?" "Lucy," a voice asked. It was hesitant. "This is Rachel. Rachel Dunn." I blinked in surprise. Rachel was a former colleague of Ethan's. We had been friendly years ago, but we had lost touch when she changed companies. "Rachel, hi," I said. "It has been a long time." "I know," she said. "Look, this is awkward. I heard about the divorce. Word travels fast in our industry. I assume Ethan is telling everyone I have lost my mind," I said dryly. "He is," Rachel confirmed. "But that is not why I am calling. I saw him a few months ago, in January. We were at a mixer for the regional sales conference." I waited, my grip tightening on the phone. "He was drinking," Rachel said. "He was with a group of guys, and they were talking about, well, about wives, and prenups, and assets." "What did he say?" "Rachel, he was bragging. Lucy, he said he had a strategy. He said," she paused, taking a breath. "He said, 'I have got her trained. She is so afraid of losing the lifestyle that she will sign whatever I put in front of her. I could hide $1 million in plain sight, and she would thank me for it.'" I closed my eyes. Hearing it from a third party was different than suspecting it. It was a physical blow. "He called it his exit strategy," Rachel added softly. "He said he was going to make sure he kept the golden goose while he got rid of the baggage." "I am the baggage," I said. "I am so sorry." "Lucy," Rachel said. "It made me sick to hear it. I should have told you then, but I didn't know if he was just talking trash. But now that I know what is happening, I thought you should know. He planned this. This wasn't an accident." "Thank you, Rachel," I said. "Would you be willing to sign an affidavit stating what you heard?" There was a pause. Then, "Yes, absolutely. He is a pig." I hung up the phone and added Rachel's name to the witness folder. That night, I sat in the dark guest room. The evidence was overwhelming. The hotel bills, the apartment lease, the fake company, the witness testimony. It was a mountain of proof, and yet I felt a heavy, crushing exhaustion. I looked at the ceiling. I was so tired. I was tired of the fighting. I was tired of the cold wars in the kitchen. I was tired of being the investigator of my own life. Part of me, a small, weak part, wanted to just stop. I wanted to tell Marianne to just settle, to take whatever offer he gave me and walk away just to make the noise stop, just to be free of his toxicity. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Ethan. He was downstairs in the study, but he was texting me. "You think you are so smart with your little lawyer and your investigator, but you are missing the point. I did what I had to do. The money transfers. They were to keep things quiet. to protect your reputation as much as mine. I paid to keep the secrets so you could live in your little bubble. You should be thanking me, not suing me." I stared at the screen. He had just admitted it. In his arrogance, in his atlukip to shame me and claim the moral high ground, he had just admitted that the transfers were to keep secrets. He had admitted the money was used to cover up his indiscretions. He had just handed me a confession. The exhaustion vanished. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. He truly believed he was the hero of this story. He believed that stealing our money to pay off his mistress and hide his affair was a noble act of protection. The level of delusion was staggering. I did not reply. I took a screenshot. I luck-yelled it to Marianne. I got up and walked to the mirror. I looked at the woman staring back at me. She looked tired. Yes, but she did not look broken. She looked like someone who was done being baggage. I relucky bared his laugh. I relucky bared the way he looked at me at that dinner party, mocking me to our friends. I relucky bared the text to Brianna. "She needs me. I do not need you, Ethan," I said to the reflection. "And I am not going to settle." The next morning, I sat in Marianne's office again. We had the full picture now. The credit card statluckiants showing the lifestyle spending. The lease for the love nest paid for by the shell company. The witness statluckiant from Rachel proving plucky editation. And the text message from last night, admitting the money was hush money. Marianne looked at the stack of evidence. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose, then looked at me with a sharp, satisfied smile. "He is going to walk into that courtroom playing the victim," Marianne said. "He is going to wear his best suit. He is going to tell the judge that you are hysterical, that you are vindictive, and that you are making mountains out of molehills." She tapped the screenshot of the text message I had sent her. "He thinks he can charm the judge the way he charmed you," she continued. "He thinks he can talk his way out of this." She placed her hand on the file. "Heavy with the truth of his betrayal. But we have something he cannot control," Marianne said. "We do not just have his bank accounts, we have his own words, and when the judge reads this text, where he admits to spending marital funds to hide his secrets, the performance is going to end." "So we are ready?" I asked. "We are ready," Marianne said. "We are not just going to divorce him. Lucy, we are going to audit him." The day of the preliminary hearing arrived, bringing with it a suffocating atmosphere of sterile hallways and fluorescent lights. We were not yet at the full trial, but this was the mediation phase, a mandatory step where the court atlukkips to force two warring parties to find a middle ground before the real war begins. I sat next to Marianne Holt in a conference room that smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. My hands were folded in my lap, resting on top of the black binder that contained the autopsy of my marriage. Marianne looked calm, almost bored, flipping through her notes with a rhythmic snap of the pages. Then the door opened, and Ethan walked in. He was a masterpiece of manipulation. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit, not his most expensive one, but one that was tailored to perfection. He had chosen a pale blue tie, a color that suggested softness, trustworthiness, and calm. His hair was neatly combed, but not too slick. He looked tired. He had dark circles under his eyes that I suspected were enhanced by a lack of sleep, or perhaps just a lack of moisturizer for the occasion. He did not look like a man who was funneling $50,000 to a mistress through a shell company. He looked like a grieving husband who was baffled by his wife's sudden descent into madness. He was followed by his lawyer, Gavin Pruitt. Gavin was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that produced high-end sharks. He had a smile that showed too many teeth and a handshake that was firm enough to crush small bones. "Good morning, Marianne," Gavin said, his voice booming with artificial cheer. He turned to me and lowered his volume to a tone usually reserved for funeral parlors. "Mrs. Collins, I hope you are holding up well." I nodded once. Saying nothing, they took their seats opposite us. Ethan looked at me, his eyes wide and filled with a performance of hurt. He offered me a small, tentative smile, the kind you give to a frightened animal. It took every ounce of my self-control not to reach across the table and slap him. The court-appointed mediator, a weary-looking woman named Mrs. Albright, opened the file. "We are here to discuss the preliminary division of assets and see if we can reach a stipulation on the Tlucky-Porary orders," she said. "Mr. Pruitt, you may begin." Gavin Pruitt leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands behind his head. "Thank you, Mrs. Albright," he said. "Look, my client's position is very simple. Mr. Collins loves his wife. He is deeply saddened that we are here. He believes that Mrs. Collins has been under a great deal of stress lately, perhaps due to work, and this stress has led to some unfortunate misunderstandings regarding their finances." He looked at me with pity. "We want to make this easy for Lucy," Gavin continued, using my first name to establish a false sense of intimacy. "We are willing to offer a quick settlucient. Ethan is generous. He is willing to provide a lump sum of $20,000 to help Lucy get settled in a new apartment, and he will not contest her keeping her personal vehicle. In exchange, we ask that she waive any claim to his business interests, including the consulting firm she has been so fixated on, and sign a non-disclosure agrilucient regarding the details of the marriage. $20,000. He was offering me $20,000 to walk away from a marriage where he had hidden hundreds of thousands. He was offering me my own car, which I had paid for, and he wanted a non-disclosure agrilucient. He wanted to buy my silence for pennies." Marianne did not laugh, but the corner of her mouth twitched. "My client is not interested in a nuisance settlucient, Mr. Pruitt," Marianne said, her voice dry. "We are here to discuss the marital estate, which includes the assets Mr. Collins has been systematically draining for the past 18 months. Ethan sighed. A long, tragic sound. He looked at the mediator. "I just want peace," he said softly. "I just want both of us to move on. I hate seeing Lucy like this. She is so angry. I don't know where this anger is coming from." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I kept my face forward, looking at the mediator, but I slid my hand into my pocket and glanced down at the screen. It was a text from Ethan. He was sitting 3 feet away from me, looking at the mediator with the face of a saint, and texting me under the table. "Take the deal. If you push this, I will make sure you end up with nothing. You will be homeless by the time I'm done with you." I looked up. Ethan was nodding sulkily as Gavin spoke about fairness. The disconnect between the man speaking and the man texting was so jarring it felt like vertigo. He was two people, the public victim and the private executioner. I showed the screen to Marianne under the table. She glanced at it, her expression unchanged, and gave a tiny nod. "Mr. Collins," Marianne said, cutting off Gavin's speech about the volatility of the market. "You claim you want peace. Yet, my client has just received a text message from you, sent 1 minute ago, threatening to leave her homeless if she does not accept your lowball offer." The room went silent. Mrs. Albright looked at Ethan. "Mr. Collins?" she asked. Ethan did not flinch. He shook his head, looking confused. "I didn't send anything," he said smoothly. "She must be reading old messages. Or maybe she is editing Tlucky. I told you, she has been acting very erratic with technology lately." "We can have the phone forensically analyzed," Marianne said. "Whatever was sent is on the server." Gavin cleared his throat, sensing the danger. "Let us focus on the financials, shall we? We are here to talk about numbers, not text messages." "Fine," Marianne said. "Let us talk about numbers. We requested the full ledgers for Silver Heron Consulting LLC 2 weeks ago. We have not received Tlucky. We are having some administrative issues," Ethan said quickly. "The accountant is on vacation. We cannot just conjure up documents out of thin air. I am trying to locate Tlucky, but it takes time." "It takes time to find the books for a company you own," Marianne asked. "A company that pays the rent for an apartment in Ridley Heights." "I told you," Ethan said, his voice tightening just a fraction. "That is a vendor. I don't control their books. But you control the payments sent to Tlucky," Marianne said. And we have not seen the invoices for those payments either. I am looking for Thlucky, Ethan snapped. Then he caught himself. He took a deep breath and returned to the sad husband persona. I am sorry. This is just very stressful. I am doing my best to comply, but Lucy is asking for things that are archived. We will give you 48 hours, Mrs. Albright said, making a note. If the documents are not produced, I will recommend a subpoena. Ethan nodded, looking humble. Of course, I will do my best. While they argued about deadlines, I felt another buzz. Not a text this time. An LuckyL notification. I opened my LuckyL app. It was an alert from our primary bank. Alert contact information updated. The LuckyL address associated with your account ending in 4598 has been changed to ecollins.private@gmail.com. He was doing it right now. He was sitting in the mediation room, pretending to cooperate, while actively logging into our accounts on his phone to cut me off from the notifications. He was trying to blind me before the judge could see the activity. I felt a surge of adrenaline. Mrs. Albright, I said. My voice was clear and loud. Everyone stopped and looked at me. Ethan looked annoyed that the prop had started speaking. Yes, Mrs. Collins. Mr. Collins just changed the contact LuckyL on our joint savings account, I said. I just received the alert. He is doing it right now. In this room. Ethan froze. That is ridiculous, Gavin said. My client is sitting right here. His phone is in his hand under the table, I said. Check the timestamp on the bank log. It happened 2 minutes ago. Marianne turned to Ethan. Mr. Collins, are you modifying account access during a court-ordered financial freeze? I was just checking the balance, Ethan stammered. I might have hit a button by mistake. The app is glitchy. You accidentally typed in a new LuckyL address and confirmed it. I asked. That is a very specific glitch. Mrs. Albright looked at Ethan over her glasses. Her expression had shifted from neutral to skeptical. Mr. Collins, she said sternly, you are under a temporary restraining order regarding these assets. That includes changing access protocols. Restore the original LuckyL address immediately. If you touch those accounts again without court approval, I will hold you in contempt. Ethan flushed. He looked down at his phone and tapped furiously. Done, he muttered. It was an accident. Gavin stood up, buttoning his jacket. I think we need a short recess. Tensions are high. Perhaps my client and I can confer in the hallway. 5 minutes, Mrs. Albright said. I stayed in the room with Marianne. She leaned over to me. He is rattling, she whispered. He is making mistakes because he thinks he can outsmart the Sislucky in real time. Good catch on the LuckyL. He thinks I am stupid, I said. He keeps forgetting I audit people for a living. Let him keep forgetting, Marianne said. It is our best weapon. 5 minutes later, Gavin poked his head back in. Can we speak with Mrs. Collins in the hallway? Just for a moment. Ethan has a proposal that might clear this whole thing up. Marianne looked at me. It is up to you. You don't have to speak to him. I will hear it, I said. I wanted to see him. I wanted to see the desperation up close. We walked out into the corridor. It was lucky, save for a few people at the far end near the elevators. Ethan was leaning against the wall, looking less like a victim and more like a predator who had been cornered. He straightened up when I approached. Gavin stood a few feet away, pretending to check his watch, giving us privacy. Lucy, Ethan said. His voice was low, intimate. He tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. He dropped his hand, annoyed. Look, he said. This is getting out of hand. Lawyers, mediators, subpoenas. It is messy. It is expensive. We are burning money that could be yours. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. I had Gavin draw this up, he said. It is a new asset agriluckiant, much better than the first offer. I am willing to give you $50,000 cash, plus the house. I looked at him. The house was heavily mortgaged. It had maybe $30,000 in equity. and the monthly payments were massive. He was trying to saddle me with debt. And in exchange, I asked, in exchange, you sign off on Silver Heron and the other investments, he said. You agree that those are separate property, and we drop the discovery request. We end this today. No more digging. No more spies, he smiled, that charming boyish smile that had fooled me for a decade. Come on, Lucy, he said. You don't want to go to trial. It is ugly. They will drag up everything. They will make you look unstable. I am offering you a way out, a clean slate. You get the house. You get some cash. You get to be the winner. I looked at the paper in his hand. Then I looked at his face. He was terrified. He wasn't offering me the house because he was generous. He was offering it because he was terrified of what I would find if I kept digging into Silver Heron. He was trying to buy his safety with a mortgage he didn't want to pay anymore. The house has a $4,000 a month payment, I said, and the roof needs repairs. You are offering me a liability. Ethan, it is our home, he said, his voice rising slightly. I am trying to be nice here. Take the deal. And what about the loan? I asked. The $50,000 you took out in my name. Does this agrilucciant absolve you of that? He blinked. That would be part of the debt you assume with the house. But the cash I give you covers it. I almost laughed. He wanted me to take the $50,000 he gave me to pay off the $50,000 debt he stole from me. It was a zero-sum game where I ended up with nothing but a crumbling house, and he walked away with his company and his mistress. No, I said. Ethan's smile vanished. What? No, I repeated. I am not signing that. I am not signing anything. You are making a mistake, he hissed. You are being greedy. I am not being greedy, I said. I am being accurate. I want a full audit. I want the judge to see every single dollar you moved. I want the court to decide what is fair, not you. I turned to walk back into the room. Ethan stepped in front of me, blocking my path. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. The mask of the sad husband was completely gone. His eyes were cold and hard. You think you are winning because you found a few receipts, he whispered. You think reading a few text messages is winning. You are delusional. The court does not care about your feelings. Lucy. They do not care that I screwed someone else. They are going to look at you, a 40-year-old woman with no kids and a mid-level job, and they are going to laugh. You cannot beat me. I held his gaze. I did not blink. You are right, I whispered back. The court does not care about my feelings, but they care about their own orders. And you just violated one in front of the mediator. I stepped around him and pushed open the door to the conference room. Mary Ann, I said as I sat down. Mr. Collins has declined to provide the documents. We need to file for the subpoena. Ethan walked back in, adjusting his tie, his face red. He looked at me with pure hatred. I opened my binder. I turned the page. Let him hate me. I thought, hate makes him careless. The 48 hours leading up to the trial were not spent sleeping. They were spent in a state of hyper-focused preparation that felt less like legal strategy and more like surgical planning. My dining room table had disappeared beneath a sea of paper. Mary Ann Holt had given me a very specific assignment, and she knew that as an auditor. I was the only person who could execute it with the necessary precision. We needed a master exhibit. I sat with my laptop and a high-speed printer, compiling the text messages. It was not enough to simply have screenshots on a phone. Courts require clarity. They require authentication. I had to format every single message I had captured from the cloud backup and the photos of his tablet into a standardized log. Column A, date and time. Column B, sender. Column C, recipient. Column D, the message content. It was tedious work. I had to cross-reference the timestamps with the carrier logs to ensure they matched perfectly. Any discrepancy, any typo in the transcription, and Ethan's lawyer would move to have the entire exhibit thrown out as unreliable. I worked with a ruler and a red pen, checking each line at Lucky. At one point, my hand cramped, and I dropped the pen. I looked at the pile of pages. It was a transcript of my husband's cruelty. I called Marianne. Marianne, I said, my voice tight. Are you sure the judge is going to let me read these? I have heard horror stories about text messages being dismissed as hearsay or private spousal communication. Marianne's voice was calm on the other end of the line. In a standard adultery case, maybe, she said, if you were just trying to prove he slept with her, the judge might not care. The court sees infidelity every day. It is boring to Thlucky, but we are not proving infidelity. Lucy, we are proving financial malfeasance and intent. She paused, and I could hear the rustle of papers on her end. If the messages show him discussing the movlukiant of money, they are admissible as financial evidence, she continued. If they show him planning to deceive the court or hide assets, they are admissible as proof of conduct. And if they contradict what he wrote in his sworn financial affidavit, they are admissible to impeach his credibility. We are going to use his own thumbs to hang him. I went back to work. I categorized the messages. I created a section titled Intent to Conceal. Then came the report from Derek Weller. The private investigator had been busy. He had not just been watching the apartment. He had been watching the timing. He sent over a timeline that overlaid Ethan's physical location with his digital banking activity. It was chilling to see it laid out visually. On September 12th, Ethan met Brianna at a coffee shop in downtown. They sat for 45 minutes. Derek noted that they were looking at a laptop together. At exactly 2:15 in the afternoon, while they were still sitting at that table, a transfer of $8,000 was initiated from our investment account to Silver Heron Consulting. They did not just meet for romance. They met to move funds. They were co-conspirators. Brianna was not just a passive recipient of gifts. She was sitting there, watching him do it, likely helping him navigate the transfer limits. But the real blow, the one that made my blood run cold, came when I finally synced the last batch of messages from the backup I had managed to pull before he changed the password. I found a conversation from 3 months ago. I had missed it in the initial scan because I was looking for keywords like love or sex or money. This time, I was reading everything. The text was from Ethan to Brianna. It was sent on a Sunday afternoon, while I was gardening in the backyard. I were lucky baird that day. He had come out to the patio, offered me a glass of Lucky'n'Aid, and told me I looked beautiful. Then he had gone back inside to watch the game. The text read, I am going to start a fight with her tonight about the dishwasher. Watch this. I need her to be agitated so she doesn't ask about the withdrawal I made yesterday. If I get her crying, she forgets to check the math. I stared at the paper, the ink seluckied to blur. He picked fights on purpose. All those nights I lay awake wondering what I had done wrong, wondering why he was so critical of my housekeeping or my tone. It was all a distraction technique. He was lucky-oceanally abusing me to cover his financial tracks. He treated my distress as a tactical advantage. I read the next message in the chain. She is so predictable, he wrote. I tell her she is crazy, and she spends 3 days trying to prove she is sane. Meanwhile, I move the assets to the LLC. By the time she calms down, the money is washed. I am going to teach her a lesson about who really runs this house. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a sharp, stabbing sensation that had nothing to do with love. It was the death of the last tiny fragment of respect I had held for him. He wasn't just a cheater, he was a sadist. He enjoyed manipulating me. He viewed our marriage as a game where he scored points by making me suffer. I sat back in my chair and looked at the wall. I had a choice. Marianne had told me we could seal the record if I wanted to. We could present this evidence in a closed chamber to spare me the public humiliation of having these texts read into the record. We could use it as leverage to force a settleluckiant outside of court. I could take the house, take the money, and bury these words forever so no one would ever know how easily I had been played. It would be the dignified thing to do. It would be the quiet thing. But then I looked at the words again. I am going to teach her a lesson. He wanted to teach me a lesson. I picked up my phone and called Marianne. No ceiling. I said, Are you sure? Marianne asked. It will be public record. Lucy, Anyone can pull the transcript. I want it public, I said. I want it read out loud. I want the judge to hear it. I want the court reporter to type it. I do not care about my pride anymore. I care about the truth. If I hide this, I am helping him keep his secrets. I am done keeping his secrets. Good, Marianne said. Then we go for the throat. The final preparation session was brutal. Marianne played the role of Gavin Pruitt, Ethan's shark of a lawyer. She grilled me for 3 hours. Mrs. Collins, isn't it true you are under psychiatric care for anxiety? She asked, mimicking Gavin's aggressive tone. No, I said. Isn't it true you have a history of paranoia regarding your husband's Fluckiel colleagues? Marianne stopped. You are getting defensive. Lucy, I can hear it in your voice. You are tightening up. I am angry. I said, you cannot be angry. She said sharply. Anger looks like instability. Anger looks like vengeance. The judge does not reward vengeance. The judge rewards facts. You are an auditor. Be an auditor. When Gavin asks you if you are jealous, do not get mad. Treat it like a data discrepancy. She leaned across the desk. Short answers. She commanded, yes, no, I do not recall. The document speaks for itself. Do not explain. Do not justify. Do not tell a story. You are there to authenticate the evidence, not to narrate a soap opera. Let the text messages do the screaming for you. You stay silent. I practiced until my voice was flat. I practiced until I could look at the most insulting questions without blinking. I practiced turning myself into a mirror that would reflect Ethan's ugliness back at him without absorbing any of it by the evening before the trial. I was exhausted, but I was calm. I was a wire pulled so tight it hummed, but I would not snap. I was sitting on the floor of my living room, organizing the files into 3 distinct stacks: the bank, the lies, and the malice. The house was quiet. Ethan was staying at a hotel, or likely at the apartment in Ridley Heights with Brianna. My phone buzzed. I knew who it was before I looked. It was the eve of battle, and he could not resist one last psychological jab. He had to have the last word. He had to make sure I was afraid. I picked up the phone. It was a text from Ethan. There were no words at first. Just a single lucky emoji, a laughing face with tears. Then, a second bubble appeared. Good luck tomorrow. You are going to need it. I looked at the laughing face. He was still laughing, even now. With the subpoenas served, with the affidavits filed, he was still laughing. He truly believed that his charm and his high-priced lawyer were invincible. He believed that I would crumble on the stand, that I would stutter and cry and look like the crazy wife he had painted me to be. He did not know about the text I had found from that Sunday afternoon. He did not know I had the timeline from Derek. He thought we were walking into a dispute about alimony. He did not know we were walking into an indictment of his character. I did not reply. I did not delete the message. I simply took a screenshot. Exhibit Z. I thought, the final taunt. I printed the screenshot. I punched holes in the paper. I placed it at the very back of the binder. The final period at the end of a long, painful sentence. I stood up and walked to the window. The streetlights of Ashford Ridge were flickering on. It was a peaceful night, the kind of night we used to spend watching movies, the kind of night I used to think was happiness. I felt a strange sense of detachment. The woman who had loved Ethan Collins was gone. She had been dismantled, piece by piece, by his lies. The woman standing at the window was someone new. She was harder, she was colder, and she was ready. I turned off the lights in the living room. I picked up the heavy binder. It weighed 10 pounds, maybe more. It was the weight of 9 years of wasted time, converted into evidence. I walked to the door and set the binder next to my keys. Tomorrow, I will not raise my voice. I will not point my finger. I will not beg the judge to believe me. I looked at the lucky room one last time. Tomorrow, I do not tell my story. I whispered to the dark. I let him tell his. Courtroom 304 was not designed for drama. It was designed for bureaucracy. The walls were paneled in a dull, muted oak, and the air conditioner hummed with a lethargic, mechanical rattle that seluckied to suck the energy right out of the room. There was no gallery full of gasping spectators, no dramatic music swelling in the background. It was just me, Marianne, Ethan, his lawyer Gavin, and the terrifying presence of Judge Eleanor Whitaker. Judge Whitaker was a legend in Clayridge County, but not for her warmth. She was a woman who viewed Lucky Ocean as an inefficiency in the legal process. She wore her black robes like armor, and her reading glasses sat perched on the end of a nose that had sniffed out thousands of lies over a 30-year career. She did not look at me with sympathy. She did not look at Ethan with suspicion. She looked at us both as files that needed to be processed, adjudicated, and closed. Ethan took the stand first. He was brilliant. I had to give him that. If I did not know him, if I had not lived with the man who mocked me behind my back for a decade, I might have believed him myself. He sat with his hands folded politely in his lap, his shoulders slumped just enough to suggest a heavy burden of sorrow. "Mr. Collins," Gavin asked gently, standing near the podium, "can you describe the state of your marriage in the last year?" Ethan sighed. It was a soft, regretful sound. "It has been difficult," he said, his voice measured and calm. "I love Lucy. I have always loved her. But she has changed. She became very fixated on control. She started tracking my movluckiance, questioning every penny I spent, and accusing me of things that simply were not happening. It created a hostile environment. I tried to reassure her. I tried to be transparent, but nothing was ever enough." He looked at the judge, offering a small, helpless shrug. "I think she is just very unhappy with herself, Your Honor," he continued, "and she projected that unhappiness onto me. I just want to end this civilly so she can get the help she needs and we can both move on." I sat at the plaintiff's table, feeling the blood pound in my ears. He was painting a portrait of a hysterical, paranoid woman, and he was the saint who had endured it. He made my investigations sound like symptoms of a disease rather than a response to theft. Gavin nodded sympathetically. "And regarding the financial allegations," Gavin asked, "the accusations of hidden assets?" Ethan shook his head, looking almost amused by the absurdity of it. "Your Honor, I work in high-level consulting," he said. "The flow of money is complex. There are reimbursed luckients, vendor payments, and plucky porary holdings. Lucy does not have a background in corporate finance. She sees a transfer she does not understand, and she assumes it is a conspiracy. I have tried to explain it to her, but she refuses to listen. There are no hidden assets, just business expenses she has misinterpreted. He was doing it. He was winning." I could see Judge Whitaker making notes, her face impassive, to an outsider. His story made sense. The complex husband, the simple wife, the misunderstanding. Then it was Marianne's turn. She stood up slowly. She did not rush. She walked to the podium and placed the heavy black binder on the stand. The sound of it hitting the wood echoed in the quiet room. "Mr. Collins," Marianne said, her voice cool and crisp. "You claim that my client's accusations are a result of her paranoia and lack of financial understanding. Is that correct?" "That is correct," Ethan said, smiling politely. "And you claim that you have been nothing but transparent and supportive." "I have done my best," Ethan said. Marianne opened the binder. "Your Honor," Marianne said, turning to the judge, "we would like to introduce Exhibit C into evidence. This is a certified log of text messages sent between the defendant, Ethan Collins, and a woman named Brianna Vale, covering the period of the last 18 months. Gavin Pruitt was on his feet instantly. "Objection," he shouted, his shark-like calm evaporating. "Your Honor, this is an ambush. These are private communications. They are hearsay. They have no relevance to the financial division of assets. This is just an at-luck-ip to lucky-barrass my client by airing dirty laundry. This is a divorce court, not a tabloid." Judge Whitaker looked over her glasses at Marianne. "Ms. Holt," she said, her voice like dry leaves. "What is the relevance of these messages? I do not have time for soap operas. If this is just proof of an affair, I will stipulate that he cheated and we can move on. I do not need to read the love letters. It is not proof of an affair." Your Honor. Marianne said steady as a rock. It is proof of financial fraud. It is proof of intent to conceal assets. And it is direct impeachment of the witness's testimony regarding his transparency. Judge Whittaker paused. She looked at Ethan, then back at Marianne. I will allow it, the judge said. But be warned, Ms. Holt, if you read a single line that is purely salacious, I will strike the entire exhibit and sanction you. Keep it to the money. Marianne nodded. She turned back to Ethan. Mr. Collins, Marianne said, please look at the document in front of you. Tab 3. Message dated Novlucky Bur 12th. Time, 4:30 in the afternoon. Ethan looked down. I saw his throat work as he swallowed. Marianne did not ask him to read it. She read it herself. She read I just transferred the funds to the LLC. Lucy is asking questions again. I'm going to gaslight her until she thinks she lost the receipt. She is so easy to manipulate when she is crying. The silence in the room was absolute. It was not the silence of boredom anymore. It was the silence of a vacuum. Marianne looked up. Mr. Collins, did you send this message? Ethan shifted in his chair. The polite smile was gone. I do not recall that specific message, he stammered. It sounds like it is taken out of context. It was probably a joke. A joke, Marianne repeated flatly. Let us look at another one. Tab 4. Decluckyber 2nd. She read again. Do not worry about the car payments. I took out a loan in her name. She never checks her credit report. By the time she finds out, I will have the assets moved offshore. Gavin stood up again. Objection relevance. Overruled, Judge Whittaker snapped. She was leaning forward now, staring at Ethan. Marianne continued. Relentless. She flipped the page. Tab 6, January 15th. You wrote, I have a strategy. I will drain the operating account and call it a loss. She will be lucky if she walks away with the furniture. Ethan's face was losing its color. He looked at Gavin, then at the judge. These are private conversations. He burst out, his voice cracking. This is a violation of my privacy. She hacked my phone. Mrs. Collins did not hack your phone, Marianne said calmly. She took photographs of a family device you left unlocked in a common area. But let us go back to your stat luckiant. Mr. Collins, you just told this court under oath that there were no hidden assets. You told this court that Lucy was paranoid. Marianne pointed to the binder. But here, in your own words, you admit to taking out loans in her name without her consent. You admit to moving assets to an LLC to hide Thlucky. You admit to intentionally causing her lucky-oceanal distress to cover your tracks. That was just venting, Ethan yelled, gripping the railing of the witness stand. I was blowing off steam. I talk a big game to impress people. Okay, it does not mean I actually did it. Marianne flipped to the next page. Then let us discuss the text from March 3rd, she said. This was the one. This was the twist we had been holding back. She read, I moved the big chunk to the account Lucy will never find. The one under your brother's name. It is safe there. She can audit the joint account all she wants. The real money is ghosted. I watched Judge Whittaker. Her eyes narrowed. She picked up her pen and wrote something down aggressively. Mr. Collins, Marianne said, regarding this message, you mention an account under a brother's name. Specifically, the brother of Ms. Vale. Is that correct? Ethan opened his mouth. But no sound came out. He looked like a deer in the headlights of a slucky truck. I don't know what you are talking about, he whispered. Mr. Collins, Marianne said, her voice hardening. We have the bank records for Silver Heron Consulting. We have the lease agrilucciant for the apartment. And we have this text message where you explicitly state that you moved the big chunk of money to an account associated with Ms. Vale's brother. She leaned in. Where is that money? Mr. Collins. Ethan looked at the judge. Your Honor, he said, his voice Terlucky bling. This is a misunderstanding. That text. It was just bravado. I was trying to impress Brianna. There is no other account. I swear. Judge Whittaker raised her hand. It was a small gesture, but it silenced the room instantly. She looked at the binder, Then she looked at Ethan. Her expression was no longer bureaucratic. It was lethal. "Mr. Collins," Judge Whittaker said. Her voice was low, but it carried to every corner of the room. "You are currently under oath. Perjury is a felony. Dissipation of marital assets is a serious violation of this court's standing orders." She tapped the binder with her index finger. "You have stated to this court that you have disclosed all assets. Yet I am looking at a written communication from you, dated 3 months ago, in which you claim to have ghosted funds into a third-party account." Ethan wiped sweat from his upper lip. It was just talk. He insisted. "I was just talking tough." Judge Whittaker did not blink, then explained the discrepancy. She said, "You claim you were just talking, but the plaintiff has provided evidence of a $50,000 loan taken out in her name that corresponds with the purchase of a vehicle for your mistress's company. That is not talk, Mr. Collins. That is math." Ethan looked at Gavin, begging for help. Gavin was staring at the table, refusing to make eye contact. He knew a sinking ship when he saw one. I needed operating capital." Ethan stammered. It was a business decision. "And the account under the brother's name," the judge pressed, "does it exist?" Ethan hesitated. The silence stretched out, long and agonizing. If he said yes, he admitted to hiding assets. If he said no, and we proved it later, he would go to jail for perjury. He was trapped in a cage of his own making. I might have parked some funds there temporarily," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "for tax purposes." "Parked some funds," the judge repeated. "How much I am not sure of the exact amount," Ethan said, looking down. Judge Whittaker leaned back in her chair. The leather creaked loudly. "Mr. Collins," she said slowly, enunciating every syllable, "I am going to ask you one more time, and before you answer, I want you to look at the woman sitting at the plaintiff's table. The woman you claimed was crazy. The woman you claimed did not understand finance." I looked up. Ethan turned his head slowly to look at me. His eyes were wide, filled with shock and a sudden, terrifying realization that the game was over. I did not smile. I did not glare. I just looked at him with the cold, hard stare of an auditor who had found the discrepancy. "Answer the question, Mr. Collins," Judge Whittaker commanded. "How much money is in that account?" Ethan looked back at the judge. He looked like he was about to be sick. $200,000, he whispered. The court reporter's typing was the only sound in the room. Judge Whittaker stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to the bailiff. "Bailiff, please secure the doors," she said. "We are going to take a recess. But Mr. Collins is not leaving this building until I have a full accounting of every single penny he has touched in the last 5 years. She looked back at Ethan, her eyes cold as ice. "You thought you were smarter than your wife, Mr. Collins. You are about to find out that you are certainly not smarter than this court." She banged her gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. The recess lasted exactly 1 hour, but it felt like a decade. When the bailiff opened the doors and allowed us back into the courtroom, the atmosphere had shifted fundamentally. Before, the air had been thick with bureaucratic boredom and Ethan's manufactured confidence. Now, it was charged with electricity, the kind of static tension you feel right before lightning strikes a tree. I sat down next to Marianne. She did not look at me. She was busy arranging the final stack of papers on the table, her mavlukiance precise and lethal. Across the aisle, Ethan looked like a man who had been physically beaten. His tie was loosened slightly, a crack in his perfect armor. Gavin Pruitt was whispering furiously into his ear, but Ethan was staring straight ahead at the luck-empty witness stand, his eyes glassy. Judge Whittaker swept back into the room. She did not sit down immediately. She stood behind her high desk, looking down at Ethan with an expression that could have frozen water. "Be seated," she commanded. We sat. "Mr. Collins," the judge began, her voice deceptively quiet. "Before the recess, you admitted to the existence of an undisclosed account containing approximately $200,000. You claimed this was a temporary tax strategy. You claimed your texts regarding hiding assets were merely tough talk. Ethan nodded quickly, grasping at the lifeline. Yes, Your Honor. It was just bravado. I was trying to impress a woman. It was stupid, but it was not malicious. Marianne stood up. Your Honor, she said, we ask permission to submit the final pages of Exhibit C. These are the reluciender of the text message chain that Mr. Collins believes is merely bravado. We believe these messages prove that the concealment was not only malicious but plucky editated. Submit thlucky, Judge Whittaker said. Gavin half rose to object, but he saw the look on the judge's face and sat back down. He knew it was over. He was just trying to minimize the blast radius now. Marianne walked the papers up to the bench. Judge Whittaker put on her glasses. The room was silent. The only sound was the rustle of paper as the judge turned the pages. 1 page, 2 pages. Then she stopped. She read the page once, then she read it again. She lowered the paper and looked at Ethan. It was a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. Mr. Collins, Judge Whittaker said, I am going to read a portion of this text message into the record. I want to make sure I am understanding your definition of bravado. She held the paper up. On March 15th, at 9:30 in the evening, you wrote to Ms. Vale, I moved the last $50,000 through the LLC today. It cleans the trail perfectly. Lucy is too stupid to trace it. She is too busy crying about the marriage to check the ledger. I will leave her with the debt and take the cash. By the time she figures it out, I will be untouchable. The judge lowered the paper. Did you write this, Mr. Collins? Ethan opened his mouth. He looked at Gavin. Gavin looked at the ceiling. Ethan started, his voice cracking. I was angry. We were fighting. This is not anger, Judge Whittaker interrupted, her voice rising for the first time. This is a confession. You explicitly state your intent to clean the trail. You explicitly mock the intelligence of your wife, the plaintiff, relying on her luciotional distress to cover your theft. You call her too stupid to find the money you are stealing from the marital estate. She leaned forward, her robes bunching around her arms. It is rare, Mr. Collins, that I see a case of fraud so clearly documented by the perpetrator himself. You did not just cheat on your wife, you conspired to defraud her. You used her trust and her grief as a weapon against her. It was just a text, Ethan cried out, desperate now. It does not prove I did it. But the bank records do, Judge Whittaker said, slamming her hand down on the file. Ms. Holt has provided the transaction logs. The transfer of $50,000 occurred exactly 20 minutes after this text was sent. The dates match. The amounts match. Your arrogance matches. Ethan slumped in his chair. The fight went out of him, but Marianne was not done. Your Honor, she said, if I may direct the court's attention to the final message on that page, the one regarding the joint credit card debt. Judge Whittaker looked down. Her eyebrows shot up. Ah, yes, the judge said. The debt Mr. Collins claimed was for household renovations. She looked at Ethan. Mr. Collins, you listed a $40,000 credit card debt on your financial affidavit as a joint marital liability, claiming it was used for home repairs. Is that correct? Yes, Ethan whispered. We fixed the roof. Really? Judge Whittaker asked. Because here, in this text dated April 2nd, you wrote, I put my gambling losses on the joint card. I will tell Lucy it was for the roof. She never asks for receipts. We will split the debt in the divorce, and she will end up paying for half of my bad luck. The courtroom gasped. Even the court reporter paused for a fraction of a second. This was the twist that broke the room. It was not just about hiding money. He had actively created debt, lied about its origin, and tried to force me to pay for his mistakes. He had gambled whether on stocks or cards. It did not matter, and he had tried to make me subsidize his failure. Gavin Pruitt put his head in his hands. He knew there was no coming back from this. Mr. Collins, Judge Whittaker said, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. You have perjured yourself in my courtroom. You have filed a false financial affidavit. You have plucky-peated to offload personal gambling debt onto your spouse through deceit. She closed the folder. The sound was final. Stand up, she ordered. Ethan stood up. His legs were shaking. He gripped the table for support. This court finds that the defendant, Ethan Collins, has engaged in the Sistlucky-atic dissipation of marital assets, Judge Whitaker ruled. The court further finds that the defendant has acted with malice and intent to defraud. She picked up her pen. I am throwing out the premediation agrilucciant. We are proceeding to a final judgment right now. I am awarding the plaintiff, Lucy Collins, the marital home in its entirety, free and clear of any mortgage liability, which shall be assumed solely by the defendant. Ethan made a choking sound. I am also awarding the plaintiff 100% of the assets currently held in the Silver Heron consulting accounts, as well as the $200,000 hidden in the third-party account. The defendant is ordered to repatriate those funds immediately. Your Honor, I can't, Ethan stammered. That will bankrupt me. You should have thought of that before you decided your wife was too stupid to catch you, Judge Whitaker snapped. Furthermore, regarding the $40,000 credit card debt that is classified as non-marital waste, it is assigned 100% to the defendant. Mrs. Collins is absolved of all liability. She looked at him over her glasses. And Mr. Collins, because you lied on your sworn affidavit, I am referring this transcript to the district attorney's office for review regarding potential charges of perjury and fraud. You wanted to play games with the law. Now you can play thlucky with a prosecutor. Ethan went pale, white. He looked like a ghost. The divorce is granted on the grounds of adultery and financial misconduct, Judge Whitaker said. Court is adjourned. She banged the gavel. For a moment, nobody moved. The echo of the gavel hung in the air. Then, Ethan turned to look at me. He did not look like the confident executive who had laughed at me for 6 months. He did not look like the man who had texted his mistress that I was pathetic. He looked at me with a mixture of shock and terror, as if he was seeing me for the first time. The weak Lucy, the clueless Lucy, the Lucy he had built up in his head to justify his cruelty, she was gone. In her place sat the woman who had audited him. He opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to beg, perhaps to blame me one last time, but he saw my face. I was not smiling. I was not gloating. I was not crying. I was simply looking at him with the detached, professional indifference of a stranger. He closed his mouth. He turned and walked out of the courtroom, his lawyer trailing behind him like a funeral procession. Marianne closed her binder. She turned to me and offered a rare, genuine smile. We audited him, she said softly. We certainly did, I replied. I walked out of the courthouse alone. The air outside was crisp and cold. The sun was shining, bright and indifferent. It was the first day of the rest of my life. I walked down the concrete steps, the same steps where I had stood months ago, terrified and heartbroken. Now, I felt light. I felt clean. I reached the bottom of the stairs and my phone buzzed in my pocket. I stopped. I knew who it was. I pulled the phone out. Ethan, Lucy. Please, you have to talk to me. The DE. Are you serious? You are ruining my life. We can fix this. I still love you. Don't do this. I looked at the words. I still love you. 6 months ago, those words would have made me pause. They would have made me question everything. Now they just look like pixels on a screen. They looked like another bad data point in a corrupted file. He was still trying to manipulate me. He was still trying to find the button that would make me compliant. He did not realize that he had disconnected that wiring a long time ago. I did not type a reply. I did not send a scathing retort. I did not tell him to rot in hell. I simply pressed block. Then I selected the message thread and pressed delete. I put the phone back in my pocket and looked up at the sky. He used to laugh because he thought I had no proof. He thought my silence was weakness. He thought my patience was stupidity. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the free air. I do not need to answer him, I said aloud, my voice strong and steady in the quiet afternoon. I do not need to say a word. The court has already answered for me. I walked toward my car, leaving the courthouse behind me. I did not look back. There was nothing there for me anymore. My future was ahead, and for the first time in a long time, the ledger was balanced. Thank you so much for listening to Lucy's story. It was a long journey from betrayal to justice, and I hope you found the ending as satisfying as I did. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you listening from today? Are you tuning in from the busy streets of New York, the quiet countryside of England, or somewhere halfway across the world? Let me know. I love reading about where our community is growing. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of karma and justice, please make sure to subscribe to the channel Olivia Revenge Stories. Don't forget to like this video and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need a reluckiander that the truth always comes out in the end. Thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next story.